What's up, y'all? It's Rattlesnake, host of the Chairgating podcast over here at Belly Up Sports. And as I'm sure you're all aware by now, Jimmie Johnson has officially announced his retirement for 2020, quickly going from one of the most hated drivers in NASCAR to easily the most loved. And I mean, hey, I think that's great. I'm not here to try to kick the guy while he's retiring, but a little honesty from these fans would be nice, is all I'm saying. If you hated Jimmie Johnson as he was kicking your driver's ass and winning all those championships, I hope that you're cheering for his retirement. The only people in my book that are allowed to get away with this are the ones that are fans of drivers that have since retired from when Jimmie Johnson was kicking their ass. I mean, I guess that's fair. Like, the reason you hated the guy to begin with doesn't even exist anymore because your driver's gone. And, I mean, Jimmie Johnson's going to outlive everyone, I'm pretty sure. Now that he's retiring from NASCAR, what he should do is kind of become like an Alex Jones and just start selling supplements and pills because it would actually work. Because if Alex Jones is able to get away with, making a living off selling supplements, a guy like Jimmie Johnson, the guy's 44 years old, drives a car for a living, and could definitely still kick my ass. But nevertheless, Jimmie Johnson is retiring as one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. He's ranked up right now against the likes of Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. And let's just all be honest here. He's not winning another championship. The guy hasn't won a race since like the middle of 2017, let alone a championship. So it's not like he's ever going to be able to surpass Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty on championships, but he's tied with them. So he'll forever be remembered as one of the greatest of all time. What I'd like to focus on is his 83 wins. Is he ever going to be able to get another win before he retires? Probably not. I know that might piss off some Jimmie Johnson fans to hear, but it's not like you haven't been self-aware for a few years now. It's not like you haven't been hearing the same thing for 2 years now. Look, Jimmie Johnson is one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time, but if he wanted to retire at the height of his career, before we all had to witness this, he would have retired in 2017. That would have been his last season. You're not the only fans that go through this. I mean, Kyle Larson fans have been going through this as well. Granted, at least he has a win, but you know what Kyle Larson doesn't have? 7 NASCAR championships. But at the end of the day, I just don't see any evidence pointing in the direction that Jimmie Johnson will get one more win in his entire career in NASCAR, which is unfortunate. It's sad to see. And it's not like you can blame age either when the last 3 championship fours have had Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Martin Truex Jr. We should just start calling it the Senior Championship 4 and get AARP to sponsor it. So I honestly don't know what the issue is with Jimmie Johnson. I'm sure there's a lot more educated people out there on YouTube with some more information on this. Some theories as to why he's not as good as he used to be. But none of that really matters anyway. The guy's going to go down in the history books as one of the greatest of all time. Now it'll just be interesting to see if Kyle Busch can catch up to Jimmie's total win number, which would be impressive also. But it does matter. Jimmie's replacement in that 48 for Hendrick Motorsports. The only thing that flipped quicker than the hatred for Jimmie Johnson after his retirement announcement was the conversation topic to see who is actually going to be taking the car after he leaves. And from what I can tell based on the big brain elites on Twitter, the short list seems to be Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Noah Gragson, Daniel Hemric, and Chase Briscoe. Now, let me break down all these candidates that people have just kind of thrown out into the internet and tell you why every single one of them is completely stupid. Let's start with Ross Chastain. Here's a guy that after 2 seasons in the Cup Series lost his ride and got booted at the end of this season. Now, obviously, he's in a not very good team, and I'm not going to completely blame him for that. But out of 71 starts in the Cup Series, he's only had 1 top 10. So, he must have been pretty good in the Xfinity Series to get moved up like that, and, given the opportunity, well, in 158 starts, he's only had 2 wins in the Xfinity Series, and those came in 2018 and 2019, which is when he was already in the Cup Series, meaning he was getting that, quality experience in the Cup Series, moved back down to the Xfinity Series with lesser talent, slower equipment, and was able to get the wins there. But he has been driving for a while, so you got to take that into account, right? He has 9 years of experience in the Truck Series. He's been racing in the Truck Series since 2011, so the guy's got experience. He's been around the tracks for a while, so with 9 years of opportunity in the Truck Series, he must have cleaned up, right? Well, he's had a total of 3 wins, and all 3 of those wins have come in 2019. So, in fairness, he is getting better. He is progressing. But at what point in his life? He's still young. He's 26 years old. But what he's able to start doing now, getting a couple wins in Xfinity, a couple wins in the Truck Series, is what guys are doing that are 8 years younger than him already. And if he's been racing for 9 years and he's just now coming into it, is this really the guy that you want replacing Jimmie Johnson in the 48, the 7-time NASCAR championship number? I'm not sure where these Ross Chastain truthers came from. I don't know if they just took the watermelon meme a little bit too seriously, but I personally just don't see it at all. So let's move on to the next driver, Kyle Larson, and this one at least makes a little bit more sense. I could understand 48 fans and Hendrick fans wanting to replace Jimmie Johnson with a young, talented driver that's proven himself on the track at the Cup Series level. Well, that's definitely Kyle Larson. I remember in 2017, about the time when Jimmie Johnson was falling off, Kyle Larson was what we now have as Chase Elliott. He was this young guy getting multiple wins in the season, looked extremely talented. And then also like Jimmie Johnson, last year out of nowhere, the guy just stops winning. At least this year he finally got a win again, but even when he was in the playoffs in the round of 8, it felt like he was never really there. So I don't know what's been going on with Kyle Larson, but I do know for a fact that the guy knows how to drive. Here's what confuses me, however, and maybe it's just because I'm lazy and don't like to do research before I make any kind of content, but where does this idea come that Kyle Larson's leaving Chip Ganassi? Am I missing something? And maybe I am, so if I am, just, down in the comments, let me know. But I don't know why Kyle Larson would leave Chip Ganassi. People could say, oh, well, he wants better equipment. He wants to go back to competing again. Then why the hell would he go to Hendrick? With all due respect to Hendrick, it's not like they've been the beacon for progress the past couple of years. They've had the most talented veteran on the track, as well as the most talented young driver on the track. And the best they can do is produce a couple wins each season. I just don't see why Hendrick is that much of a step up from Chip Ganassi to make Kyle Larson really want to leave his current position. So like I said, there's got to be something else there for people to keep bringing up Kyle Larson's name, because to me, it makes no sense. The next driver is Noah Gragson, and this seems to be a name that a lot of people like to throw out for any potential openings. And this pick makes a little bit more sense. It's a young, up-and-coming Xfinity driver, and Hendrick seems to definitely be gearing more towards youthful drivers. But if you're a team interested in getting a talented Xfinity driver, well, guess what? You just missed the boat. If picking up Xfinity Series drivers was the NBA draft, this year would have been 2003, next year would be 2004. And if you don't get that reference, it means you probably need to start to diversify your palette for other sports. My point is, Noah Gragson might look like a really talented driver next season in the Xfinity Series, but how come he couldn't get a single win when he had to race against guys like Reddick, Bell, and Custer? If you want a young, up-and-coming talent from the Xfinity Series, maybe 2020 isn't the best time to do it. Because inevitably, you're going to be picking a guy that's already shown you that he can't beat the competition that he had at the time, which, by the time he gets pulled up, those guys have already had a full season to really get the hang of the Cup Series. Which means you're probably going to want a guy that had some Cup Series experience, that knows what he's doing in a situation like that. Which perfectly leads us to the next driver on the not-so-short list, Daniel Hemric. Now, I've previously talked about Daniel Hemric, because based on his stats, I was saying there's no way they can't give him the award for Rookie of the Year. But because he lost his Cup Series ride before he got the award, I was saying I don't know if they'd want to do it, because it would be a hilariously ironic, good representation for how bad the Rookie of the Year battle was this year. But nevertheless, Daniel Hemric was our 2019 Rookie of the Year, but as if it's become tradition, that doesn't mean that he had a good season. In only 1 year, he managed to lose his full-time Cup Series ride at RCR, but I'm sure plenty of people will just kind of chalk it up to bad equipment. Which is fair, the equipment was not good. But that doesn't really explain why he wasn't able to get a single Xfinity Series win in the same equipment that Tyler Reddick just won a championship with. And for the final entry on this way too long short list, Chase Briscoe. The kids had 2 Xfinity Series wins and 2 Truck Series wins, and not a single Cup Series start. And I would kind of say the same thing for him like I did for Noah Gragson. The only difference is at least Briscoe was able to get a couple wins while Reddick, Custer, and Chastain were also winning. So out of that list, I would actually probably go with Daniel Hemric. Granted, that's only if he's able to really have a standout season in 2020 in the Xfinity Series. He wasn't able to do it in the Xfinity Series at RCR, which we know is great equipment, but he's coming back down with some Cup Series experience, so he might be a little bit better and be able to show these other teams, hey, I can do this, I just need some support. And most importantly, he's a realistic option for Hendrick. I also just saw today that Greg Biffle tweeted something about coming back in 2020 or looking forward to 2020, whatever that may mean. Of course, essentially everyone has started to speculate if he's going to be coming back to take the 48. Now, I can't tell if it's because I'm a boomer or I just don't have a sense of humor or if that's a redundant statement. But if people are serious about this, then I guess I have to talk about it, right? I highly doubt that Hendrick wants to bring back a veteran who's older than the guy that's leaving the car. More importantly, he said he's looking forward to 2020. Jimmie Johnson's still going to be driving in 2020. So like I said, this is probably a joke that my boomer brain just can't comprehend. But nevertheless, it would be cool to see Greg Biffle back on the track. My personal prediction for a driver taking this ride right now would probably have to be Daniel Suarez. I know he hasn't done much in the Cup Series, and in the preseason throughout the entire 2019 season, I was one of his biggest naysayers. That being said, his move back down to the Xfinity Series could be the kick in the ass that he needs to really step it up. The guy's had 3 full years of experience in the Cup Series, so if nothing else, he at least knows what he's doing, and he was on a great team. And I know he said some of the problems for him losing the ride was sponsorship dollars, but I have a hard time believing that. Now, I'm not doubting that sponsorship dollars is a problem because it sounds like it's an issue for every single driver and every single race team right now. But when I'm hearing drivers like Bubba Wallace, the only black driver in NASCAR, Daniel Suarez, the only Mexican driver in NASCAR, and Hailie Deegan, one of the most influential drivers right now on social media, when I hear that they're having problems with sponsorship dollars, all I can think is, how much worse is it for these other drivers? So I'm thinking, unless you're planning on hiring a guy like Paul Menard, whose dad will literally fund your entire team, Daniel Suarez is probably one of the better chances for you to find sponsorship money. All that being said, the fact is, he was on a great team and wasn't able to get a single win. So, I could be totally wrong here if he goes back down to the Xfinity Series and doesn't do shit. But what the hell do I know anyway? Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out Chairgating Podcast on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and wherever the hell else you listen to podcasts. And also be sure to check out BellyUpSports.com.